Good morning. I now call to order the Maryland Environmental Services Board of Directors Audit Committee meeting for May 22nd, 2025. Ms. Fuller, please confirm a quorum of the committee.
Yes, I have Ms. Jose online, I have Mr. Botts online, and Ms. Heller. And in the room, I have Dr. Glass and Dr. Johnson.
Thank you.
It is a quorum of the.
Thank you, Ms. Fuller. First on agenda today is the approval of the October 2024 Audit Committee meeting. Committee members, any changes to the meeting minutes?
No changes or updates from me.
Thank you. Hearing none, the meeting minutes are approved. And our next item on the agenda is the FY 2025 planning presentation. And for that, I call on the SBC team.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be at this table again. I was noting prior to the meeting, the last time that SB and Company did the audit for Maryland Environmental Service, I was the audit partner, and Graylin Smith was the engagement partner. So it's good to return here for the June 30, 25 audit. So we'll walk through this presentation just to talk about our audit approach and what we expect to perform or how we expect to perform the audit, as well as talk through the timeline that we've established thus far with management. Okay, so I will serve as the engagement partner this year on the audit. Graylin Smith is still a partner with SB and Company, and he will serve in that client service role. And then we always have an audit partner as well. Pamela Gray will serve as that audit partner. And then we have our audit supervisor, Mina Chatal, and this will be your leadership team for the June 30, 25 audit. I know, exactly. I have to be sensitive. So as far as the scope of services that we've been engaged to perform, it falls under the State of Maryland Audit Services contract. Of course, that would include the financial statement audit for MES, as well as the compliance audit because of the federal funding that requires a uniform grant guidance audit in the submission of a data collection form to the Federal Clearinghouse. That's part of those services, as well as a separate report and schedule of the indirect costs. Those will be the primary deliverables as part of the audit. But I think what's also important is that you have us as a resource. You have this leadership team, SB and Company, available for questions, consultations, as you continue to operate throughout the year. If there are things that take place and you need that sounding board, you need that guidance, we are available. That's part of our service to you. So when you look at the key phases for the audit, so we've already have done our planning portion of the audit. We've met with him and his team. We've met internally as an engagement team, started our risk assessment so that we're able to identify what are those key processes that we need to review and make sure that we have an understanding of as part of the audit process, so that we're then planned and able to start what we call our preliminary testing. So we break our audit into a preliminary testing phase and then a final testing phase. So we've already agreed on timing for our preliminary work to start mid-June. And what we like to do during that preliminary is really come in and establish our understanding of MES. So we're meeting with the process owners, so that we can understand what's that disbursement process, what's that procurement process, what's the cash receipts and billing, right? We know the importance of that billing process. So we will, come on site to meet with those process owners, walk through those processes, identifying controls within those processes, and then we'll also make selections to actually test and validate. So we're already scheduled to perform that work. Once we've completed that preliminary testing, we're able to kind of conclude on some of our risk assessment, and then that allows us to then go to the next phase, which is final, and that's after MES has done their close for the year. right? So now when we're coming back out here for final, which we would expect to be that end of August, September timing, we're now able to focus on more what we call substantive work, right? So now we want to validate balances because we're assuming we will have favorable testing from our control, can rely on the controlled environment, right? That's an assumption, and able to proceed. But if for some reason that control assessment does not turn out, the way we expect, we now have that time to adjust and determine what level of substantive testing we may need to do to cover the outcome of that. So that's why we separate those phases. And then, of course, we have our final reporting phase, walking through the financial statements, making edits, making sure that those are in accordance with the latest pronouncements. And of course, then meet with this committee again to now be able to report out on what those results were, as well as with the board as well on that report out. So here you'll see the timeline that's been discussed with management, and that we expect to be able to adhere to. Again, we've already talked about the planning piece. We've done that earlier in the month. We're now meeting with the committee. Again, I think it's June 16th, if I'm not mistaken, but we have agreed to the weeks in June for our preliminary testing. And we will finalize those exact weeks for final, just from communication with management once they've closed the financial numbers. We just expect it to be during that time. So we're okay with that. And we'll have that meeting with the audit committee and then the board so that we're able to finalize those reports by that due date of no later than October 30th. Did I miss anything, Hammond? I think that timeline is pretty consistent with what we've discussed. And here, just to reiterate our SBC audit approach, this is an audit approach that's unique. It's proprietary for SB and Company, and it's a risk-based audit approach. So you'll see at the top of that funnel, that's really, supposed to be a pictorial of kind of the effort from an audit perspective. So we put more time and effort from a planning and assess test controls of the environment, because that really helps filter those risks and where we need to address, again, more substantive testing. So again, that preliminary testing to me is key in our audit approach so that we really do understand the people, the skill sets that are executing the various processes, and being able to test to make sure that those are operating. And if we do find gaps there, that could result in a potential recommendation, but then that would also have us look at our audit approach to make sure that we're doing the level of work that we need to do to ultimately issue the opinions on the financial statements. And that flows through, again, to that last section there, where, we're ultimately reporting out to the committee. And again, any recommendations that we may have identified as part of the process. And the last thing that I would add here, when we're looking at the control environment, we also involve our IT, our information technology group, as well, just understanding the general ledger system. Are there any ad hoc IT systems that feed into the general ledger? And we look at that from a high level kind of general controls. What are some of the policies and procedures from an IT access to systems? We look at that as well, because we know we're ultimately relying on systems when it comes to an audit. So we do want to look at the various policies and procedures that your IT area has in place over those systems. So these are some of the significant audit areas that have come out of our risk assessment thus far. You'll see here, cash and cash equivalents, of course, just making sure that there's adequate controls associated with those. Your accounts payable and your unbilled project costs. So again, when we're out here in June and understanding that billing process, we're looking for the proper segregation of duties and the sources of information that's being used for that billing to ensure that that's accurate. Any asset capitalization, fixed assets, based on your capitalization threshold, making sure those items are recorded. We have the right of use accounting when it comes to the various leases, software related leases under that new accounting. So we want to make sure that we're accounting for those items, making sure proper cutoff for your liabilities, right? So understanding, what systems you have in place to make sure that they're recorded in the proper period, are just some of the areas that we know we will, again, make sure we understand who's doing it, how it's being done, and then put procedures in place to address that. That would also include, for midshore, your landshore closure, post-closure cost. Again, we're not going to wait until final to look at that liability. We're going to understand that process and how that's estimated internally during our preliminary so that we are, comfortable with what that process entails, and then we'll validate the information once it's complete. So you'll see listing here just the various areas that we will give specific audit attention to.
Can I
Yeah,
ask a question?
absolutely.
One of the things I looked for was the credit card activity we have going on now. I know it started, but I didn't see it here and I didn't see it on the years to be picked up.
Okay.
And one of them may look at the amount, they can go from, 2,500 to 25,000. At least there's probably some areas we should look at to make sure that things are being done. So maybe some consideration.
Nope, absolutely. That's a very fair point. And you're right. And within our accounts payable accrued liabilities, that's where our disbursement process, but you're right. I do agree that it's a different risk level when it relates to credit cards or procurement cards. So we do build that into our disbursement process, but we will make sure that that's shown separately. Very fair point. And as always, there's always something new happening from an accounting perspective with government auditing standards. There are two particular GASB pronouncements that will have that need to be implemented by Maryland Environmental Service this year. The one of most significance is your GASB 101 that relates to compensated absences. So, you've always accrued for your vacation leave. Now what this pronouncement requires is for management to now look at sick leave and use of sick leave, and now accruing for sick leave just as you do for vacation. So that's something we'll be talking, to management during our preliminary time and just understand that assessment that's happening, and how large that impact might have for services. We're not certain yet. The 102 really becomes some disclosure items, but I do not expect that to have a impact for MES. And then we have some upcoming items you'll see in fiscal 26 and 27. And what our approach is that we're just keeping that communication open with management. All right, sharing knowledge that we have about the pronouncements, really trying to take a common sense approach to implementing those, and then just providing any guidance we can to management to help them and doing their research and making sure it's recorded appropriately within their book. So 101 compensated absences is the one that we will focus on for fiscal year 25. And I spoke about, I'm not going to go through all the points on these slides, but I did speak in our audit approach that we follow a risk-based audit approach. So I do want to just share the way in which we're approaching that understanding of the control environment here. We have two levels. One is an overall, what we call control assessment approach, and that follows a very common COSO framework where you're looking at control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information communication. That's where that IT review comes in from an audit perspective, monitoring, and the various bullets listed there are things that we are considering. So as we're meeting with people, as we're reviewing any specific policies and procedures that you have in place, we're reviewing board minutes, committee minutes, we're taking these things into effect where we can then come back to you and give you our assessment of the environment and whether or not we believe that's working effectively or not for Maryland Environmental Service. And then the second level is a much more detailed level. So I spoke about meeting with process owners. These are the processes that we expect to review. So your treasury, your estimation that landfill is a large, estimate included within the financial statement. So again, understanding that process, your year-end closing with financial reporting, the expenditure process you'll see here, the cash disbursements that we talk about, that's where that credit card piece, would come in. And actually see the credit card process, we did separate from a process perspective. You'll see that one listed there, and that we're testing controls, right? So your first 3 boxes is really our meeting, our understanding, our thinking through what could go wrong. And then that third column is where we would expect to actually take transactions and test the operating effectiveness of the process. And if it's not checked in D, that means it's a more substantive approach. But either way, it's being audited, it's being addressed, is just the way in which we decide and think the audit approach is most efficient to do. So for your payroll, the revenue with the billing, there's transactions selected throughout the year to ultimately test that that process is operating. Where fixed assets might be a more substantive test. The information technology that we spoke about, we have our led by Julie Paris, and then we have the grant compliance for the single audit area. And that's really, that's our audit approach. We know we're not completing a fraud audit, but in evaluating processes, looking for segregation of duties, looking for controls to be in place. If we were to identify or if we're made aware of any fraud, of course, we will bring that to this committee's attention right away. So we know we have some responsibilities from a reporting perspective, but I would not say a financial audit is a fraud audit. And then the last item I wanted to hear is just expectations. I think one has already been shared to make sure that that credit card process is within our scope, which it is. But if there are any other, areas that we need to be taken into consideration, we do know that our reporting back to this committee, it's really to help you execute your fiduciary responsibility. So we do recognize being kind of the eyes, the ears. So if there are just things that we need to be aware of or just will help you in executing your responsibilities, please do not hesitate to share. And our contact information is in here as well. So if there aren't questions, immediately we're available, phone call or email away. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions? I'm not hearing any questions, so thank you for your presentation, Ms. Booker, and we look forward to working with you, continuing working with you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Me too. Welcome back to MES. And since you are familiar with us, it will be much easier. But we changed the auditors, so there will be new perspective. So we are looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the procurement policies, and for that we call upon Ms. Condra.
Morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Okay,
Thank
okay. First, policy is the procurement policy. Again, we had our procedures that we're going by, but we decided to put a actual procurement policy based on some changes and to ensure that we're remaining compliant with COMAR and basically any other regulations that's out there. So I'm just gonna read the purpose. Is to ensure that MES procurement complies with COMAR regulation, as I said, and also to seek to procure supplies, services, and construction in a cost-effective and competitive manner that aligns with the best interests of the service, its clients, vendors, and the general public. The policy also intends to strategically streamline the procurement process by reducing procurement risks and focusing on cost reduction efforts for the agency and its clients. So as we go, and I hope you guys had a chance to review it. Any questions? I didn't want to go through all the policies, but all of the reading.
And I'd like, so just to refresh everyone's memory, so this first policy is top of a policy group that will be focused on procurement that is coming out of the pit. Yes, we always will, of course, follow regulations first that are sitting above these policies. But for clarification, for them to be on our intranet in an easily located place, we've made these adjustments and subtle extra words in the policy to explain each group and how we. So, and where the pit stands right now, you know, where these two policies are before you to hopefully approve so they can go to the board. And on July 1, a lot of the things that we've discussed over the last months in the pit and the things that even Dean Johnson just alluded to with the credit card and utilizing the credit card to eliminate a lot of our POs. And quite frankly, yesterday I learned that even though I was demonstrative and aggressive in an all teams meeting, we still have folks submitting purchase orders after an invoice has already arrived. And, you know, Deion Sanders has a nice quote, you can't change culture without changing people. And I'm going to give it with your grace. We're giving grace, trying to educate folks. We will have a full training program, but in the new fiscal year, there will be disciplinary actions immediately for anyone that submits a PO after they've already bought the item. Hopefully the procurement card will alleviate. We believe it will alleviate a lot of that, but we're going to have to get to a point where people that buy inside MES understand that they need to be compliant with our policies and our regulations. And I just wanted to put that as a primer. So these two policies are very straightforward. If you have any questions, they really are about setting the construct for being a professional organization with procurement, and then setting up the purchase procurement card as a major vehicle for most of our exchanges, most of our purchasing. So I just wanted to add that color as Ms. Condra was just diving into the.
Thank you for that color.
You're welcome.
So, the next policy is, as Dr. Glass mentioned, it's a procurement card management policy. And basically, this policy is to implement criteria risk in services procurement card program. It's also to ensure the success of the program that we have in place called the One Card, and to standardize the distribution and monitoring of the cards themselves in the agency. So a lot of this policy basically talks about the program itself, and it talks about the limiting the authorization criterias. Basically, it addressed different roles within the program and define them. So so staff would understand where their role, where everyone, what everyone does, right? So basically that's what this policy does. And does enforce basically and if there's an event of inappropriate charges, right? There is some disciplinary actions, and also it does, in this policy, does highlight that internal audit would be performing quarterly reviews of P cards on a sample basis. Those are the two procurement policies that were brought to you.
Thank you, Ms. Condra. Committee members, any questions? Don't see any questions, so thank you, Ms. Condra.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda. Oh,
I think normally what we would do is if the committee is okay with these, then they would have a vote to take them to the full board at the next meeting.
I
do we have a
recommend,
motion? Go
sorry.
ahead.
I recommend, excuse me, I move to recommend approval of the full board of these two policies.
Thank you, Ms. Heller. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Botts. Ms. Fuller, can you take a roll call vote of the committee members present?
Well, that's all three of you.
All
I
right.
guess,
We will move it through consensus to the board for approval at the next board meeting.
okay.
If that's. Does that work, Ms. Fuller? Or do I have to
so.
take a formal vote?
Unless we just
The
ask for,
lawyer in the room said it does, so we're good.
Okay. All right, so the two items will move to the board for approval the next board meeting.
Can I,
Yeah,
Madam
go
Chair?
ahead.
I'd
Yes,
just like to
Dr.
add,
Potts.
so one other thing we've done, I'm reading this book called Radical Candor right now, and thank you, Mr. Sharma, for purchasing it for me. It was under $25, so. But we have even surveyed, so we surveyed staff at the start of the process improvement team, and we did survey these two policies to seek feedback from rank and file staff, and we did get about 25 responses. Most of them were positive. Some of them were confusing, but I just wanted to let the committee know that we're actually starting to, when we bring things even to you, we want staff to be engaged in the process that are interested. You know, it's 800 people, 25, we're all good. And one of them kept on saying everything's perfect. So, but I don't know if that was one of the members of the pit. It's all anonymous. But thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Glass. Our next item on the agenda is the internal auditor's report, and I call upon the internal auditor, Ms. Condra, again.
Good morning, everyone. Today we're gonna talk about some discussion points, give you an update about the internal audit, what we've been up to, and also we're gonna talk about some billable project that we are engaged in. So the first audit, want to talk about the audit we completed in FY 25. This is the duplicate payment review. The audit report was issued December 18th, 2024. And the scope of this audit is to assess the accounts payable controls to manage duplicate invoices submitted by vendors and mitigate the risks in terms of for duplicate payments. So in our review, we found that it was effective. We did find one finding, and where there weren't any periodic review of supplier information. So this is dealing with the, you could click again. Yes. Key management issues is basically in Workday, there's a master list of vendors. So no one was reviewing those to ensure that there weren't duplicate vendors in there. So that would increase the risk of duplicate payments, which we haven't seen, which going forward, it's going to be an annual review of the vendors within Workday. Questions on that? All right. Currently in progress for FY 25, we have the Popular Island contract management review. We're in the testing phase of this. We did change the dates. That's why they're in red, due to, again, some billable work. So we're focusing on the billable work, but push the dates a little bit further. So, as you see, the first audit would be, you're looking at August 11th to distribute that final report. The other one that we have is the Midshore 2 site management review, and we're in the testing phase of this. And as the same as before, move the date forward, and the distribution for final report would be August 12th. So we did perform a special investigations, and it was reviewing of the maintenance staff task. And that report was issued December 23rd, 2024. The scope of this investigation was to determine the existence of potential unfair management practices, to validate if there are controls in place to manage the maintenance staff to ensure work order requests are completed correctly and timely, and expenses are allocated correctly to the state reimbursable cost center 2181. So this internal audit was notified on August 5th, 2024, and the data period that we covered was July 1st, 2023 to August 6th, 2024. And the basis of this examination is the executive director responding to staff concerns. That's one. The second was the risk of misappropriation of state reimbursable funds, and the third is investigation, part of the list of the executive director report to the board. So what we found. So we had two findings. The first one is we found that test maintenance operation lacks or had weak controls to ensure the timely completion of work order tasks, and that expenses weren't, and to ensure that the task, work order task, and expense are allocated correctly to the appropriate cost center. So we saw inconsistency in terms of the schedule, the maintenance schedule, and what was in Workday, and then looking towards the logs. So we basically, on an average, saw a discrepancy of 55%, where they didn't match the project or cost center entered Workday, and then an average of 59%, where we saw discrepancies in schedule assignments. So that's what we noted in the first finding. In the second finding, test maintenance staff was not compliant with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the U.S. Water Service Corporation, which requires entries in logbooks. So these regulations help ensure water and wastewater treatment plants operate efficiently and comply with environmental standards. So with these two findings, there's the impact to the agencies and increased risk of fines and potential litigation due to unresolved issues at the facilities, system failures, non-compliance with regulations, potential environmental hazards, and the appearance of misappropriation of state funds. So those are the impact that these two findings have. Out of this, we recommend, well, prior to completing this investigation, the Dr. Glass required the test management to implement a system where maintenance staff provide a before and after picture of work order tasks and upload it on a shared site to be reviewed. He also began the initiative to add global positioning systems in the maintenance staff's assigned vehicles. You could click again. So that was Dr. Glass prior to the investigations, but in terms of internal audit, we recommend that the tests implement the action plan presented by him, and also create and implement a standard operation procedure for the staff to ensure that they make entries in site logbooks, and also tracks tasks to apply time work and mileage to the appropriate cost centers and project numbers. So with these recommendation, the group has until June 30th to implement these action plans.
And Law procurement and finance managing fleet, signed a contract with Samsara. And I received a demonstration yesterday that the 18 statewide vehicles, and you can see they're driving, there's a history, there's a log. So that part has been implemented. Almost all of this was implemented by the December report, except for the Samsara. That was just procured this spring and implemented, but it is a great system. Environmental operations was already using it for their heavy vehicles, for the semis on the Eastern Shore, and they've been critical. They even use the dash cam. We did not implement the dash cam in these vehicles, but they are being logged. And I got a demonstration from Fleet yesterday that was highly impressive. Happy to share sometime when people are here, because Mr. Berman can just pull up where all the vehicles are. You see it on a map, how they're driving, that they're staying in the speed limit, and where they've been. So just to have a connection between our billing, our asset management through our maintenance and mechanics and electricians, is really coming together, and they have finished loading all of the state facilities into maintenance connection so that we can really start to build a robust asset management program that that will eventually directly connect to our request of capital from the Department of Budget and Management for their maintenance. So although it started as a whistleblower complaint, this really did expand to something that is going to be beneficial and make the agency more efficient. Any questions?
Yeah. Any questions?
I hear no questions.
Mhm. So the next I wanted to cover FY25 and FY26 planned audits. We have for FY25, we have a biosolid billing process review that is projected to begin in August, September timeframe. For FY26, we had brought this to the board before, but really like to always recap going into the new fiscal year. So we have inventory management review at Masonville that we're going to review of marketing contract management processes. Also looking at reviewing the safety communication implementation processes, and this is at the Montgomery County grinding and MRF locations. And then review of the reimbursable contractor agreements. And we also have the ad, which is going to be part of our continuous auditing efforts and looking at the P card activities every quarter. It's going to be a random selection based on sample testing. So we're not going to do the whole every purchase, but every quarter we're going to select either up to 10 based on probably activity dollar value throughout the quarter and ensure that everyone is adhering to the procurement card policy. Any questions on the? Okay, so I wanted to give you guys a visual of what the internal audit organization looks like from an administrative perspective. Again, you'll have me as the chief of internal audit. We currently have an open position for a lead internal audit specialist role. I'm happy to say that Alex is now a internal audit specialist, has moved forward from his internal audit trainee position, and we welcome two internal audit trainees, Ryan and Nathan. They're doing very well. They're working on some billable work right now alongside with Alex, and and they're also training with myself. I'm training them. Questions? Awesome. So I mentioned about billable work. I want to give you guys an update on that. So within the period of May 2024 to April 2025, as you guys know, we're working on the MDEM COVID closeout project, and the hours within those time frame is, and this is only Alex. It's 1,112 hours and we have billable revenue of $33,529. This project is projected to end September 30th, 2025. And then we'll know from there if they need to need us for anything else going forward, but the contract ends September 30th, 2025. Any questions on that? Okay, so we have a new added billable project and working with Maryland Department of Environment for 2 task projects coming from the test group, where we're working with helping them with their procurement and WIFA organizations in terms of looking for process improvements and also helping them kind of move forward in their procurement and helping them with some of they have a lot of open positions and just trying to help them move forward with that and keep the process moving. So this project began in April 2025 and it ends in December 2025. And as of April 29, we have hours of 53.5 hours, and then billable revenue so far $3,778. And this is just my hours, because I'm the one that's working on this in terms of helping them out, but we also have procurement there's a other procurement piece to this project on especially task 1, which is the procurement side.
So is that the fully loaded or is that just the salary rate?
So this is just
Just the salary?
yeah.
So you have to multiply by, you have to double it.
Well, this is just based on the hours. So
Oh, that's what I'm saying. So I just want everyone to understand that it's like Alex's number was actually with the invoice to MDEM.
oh, it'd be so it's but FTE, 1 FTE and a half, 1.5 FTE.
You're not understanding.
No,
Damn it.
Yeah, it will be almost double, like 1.12 factor.
Oh, yeah, overhead, yeah.
So the
Gotcha.
overhead and fringe is applied. And I just wanted the board to remember that her numbers are half of what we actually bill. And that also, because they are billable positions that were fully funded, it directly drops to building excellence and success together. Because they're overhead positions, but they are being productive for on billable clients. So just wanted everyone to understand that. So next time you can put double.
Double.
Well, you can get the real factor.
Yeah. Any questions? That concludes.
And Ms. Condra is being modest in the engagement with MDE, and obviously that number was about 3 weeks old. But she is impressing the assistant secretary to the point where MDE is thinking of, how can I say this since we're being streamed? MDE is considering MES having a larger role in their procurement processes and in support of their financial management. So she is of Jamaican descent and believe
That's really good news.
Yes, they're if I want to chime in, they really appreciate Dr. Glass for lending us out. Every day I speak to Miss Cook, she always her gratitude always lends to, and she says that we're doing a good job. So
Well, thank you, Ms. Condra. Committee members, any questions, discussion? Our next audit committee meeting is on October. Yeah, go ahead. Was it Fuller?
Yeah, the next meeting for the audit committee is October 23rd. That's when SB and company will probably present their final report.
And we'll get that prior to, I looked at the plan, we'll get that prior to the meeting, correct?
Correct. We have informed that to SPN company, so probably at least a week ahead of.
Okay. Mr. Patel's been pretty quiet at the meeting, but I'm sure I'll hear from you next week.
Right.
So our next audit committee meeting is on October 23rd, 2025 at 9:30 a.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Heller. Do I have a second? Oh, Mr. Boss, thank you. The meeting is now adjourned. Have a good afternoon,